Two little girls vanished from a quiet orphanage without a trace. No broken windows, no signs of struggle, just gone. For 4 long years there were no answers, until a devoted old nun stumbled onto something she was never meant to find. What she discovered would turn the entire town upside down. Emily and Grace were sisters. Emily was 7, Grace was 9. Their mother had died in a car crash 6 months before, and no one ever talked about their father. They'd only been at St. Mary's Orphanage for a short while, but even in that time they became the kind of children you remember, quiet, close, and clinging to each other like 2 pieces of the same soul. They vanished on a Friday. It was a clear morning. The children were lining up for breakfast when Sister Ruth called their names. No answer, no footsteps coming down the hallway, no giggles from behind the door. Just silence. At first it felt like a game. The nuns searched the bedrooms, checked under beds, behind the heavy linen closet, even inside the laundry room. Nothing. Panic crept in slowly, then all at once. They searched the entire orphanage, the chapel, the cellar, even the surrounding woods. No broken locks, no footprints, just 2 empty beds with neatly folded blankets. Sheriff Carr and his officers came, asking questions and writing down names. They interviewed every child, every staff member, and every nun. No one had seen the girls since the night before. After 2 weeks, the official word came in, runaway case. But Sister Agnes didn't believe it. Emily was terrified of the dark. Grace wouldn't leave her side even to fetch water. They wouldn't have run off, not willingly. For months, Agnes kept searching. She took long walks into the woods with a flashlight and a small notebook. She asked around town. She even visited nearby churches and homeless shelters. 4 years passed. The world moved on. But Agnes didn't. Then one quiet morning, a letter appeared under her door. No return address, no name, just 1 line in messy handwriting. They were taken, sister. But not far. She stared at it for hours, turning it over in her wrinkled hands. Something about the writing scratched at her memory, and then she remembered Thomas. Thomas had been a troubled boy at the orphanage 10 years earlier. Barely spoke, always scribbling notes in books and hiding them around. His handwriting was nearly identical. He had aged out of the system and vanished by 16. Rumors said he joined the army, others said prison. No one knew for sure. Agnes couldn't let it go. She pulled out an old photo of Thomas, thin, dark-haired, distant eyes, and caught the 6:10 a.m. bus to the city. For the next week, she walked from place to place asking about him. Libraries, churches, shelters, gas stations. Finally, a gas station clerk nodded. Yeah, he pumps gas here on weekends. Stays at that motel across the road. Agnes crossed the street with her heart pounding. Rain tapped gently against her shoulders as she climbed the steps. The front desk clerk barely looked up. Room 12, he said. She knocked. Silence. Then the door creaked open. Thomas stood there, taller now, but with the same hollow stare. He blinked in surprise. Sister Agnes? She nodded. I got your letter. He hesitated, looked both ways down the hallway, then opened the door wider. Commune. The room was dark. Papers covered the walls. Scribbled notes, old photos, maps, newspaper clippings. Most shocking, pictures of the orphanage. And the girls. Agnes sat, her voice shaking. Thomas, where are they? Thomas didn't answer. He stepped over to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled something out. His hands trembled slightly. He placed it gently on the table. A small, faded pink backpack. The same one Emily always carried. Dirty, torn at the edges, but unmistakably hers. Agnes's breath caught in her throat. She gripped the table with both hands. Thomas, tell me what you know. Thomas glanced at the door, then whispered, It's not just them. What do you mean? There were others, he said, lowering his voice further. You just never knew about them. Agnes's heart pounded. Thomas turned to the wall and pulled down a yellowed map with red markings all over it, towns, back roads, train tracks. They've been taking kids for years, he said. Emily and Grace were just the ones you noticed. Agnes stared at the map, her voice barely a whisper. Who's they? A knock at the motel room door interrupted everything. Thomas froze. Another knock, then a voice. Open up. Agnes felt fear rise like bile in her throat. Thomas grabbed something from under the bed. A pistol. Get behind the door, sister. Agnes hesitated. Thomas, do it. She moved, crouching behind the bathroom door. The knocking turned to pounding. Then the door burst open. 3 men entered, dressed in black. Not police, not ordinary thugs either. Silent, quick. Thomas raised the gun and fired. One dropped instantly. The other 2 took cover, one ducking behind the bed, the other by the hallway wall. Bullets ripped into the walls. Lamps shattered. Dust and wood splinters filled the air. Agnes huddled, trembling, praying under her breath. Thomas shouted, "Get out the back window." "Run." She didn't move. "I said go," he yelled. She hesitated, then forced herself up and scrambled to the bathroom window. It stuck at first, but with one hard push, it slid open. She climbed out just as more gunfire erupted behind her. She hit the ground hard, rolled onto her side, and heard shouting inside the room. Then silence. She looked up at the motel behind her, heart hammering in her chest. And she knew everything was about to change. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Sister Agnes didn't stop running until she reached a narrow alley behind the motel. Her knees ached and her breath came out in short, painful gasps. The cold morning air sliced through her coat, but she didn't dare stop. She needed answers. She needed to survive. She crouched behind a trash bin, trying to listen. A few shouts came from the direction of the motel, then the sound of tires screeching as a car sped off. The city seemed unusually quiet, the only sounds being her heartbeat and the distant hum of traffic. She slowly peeked out. No one was following her. But Thomas? What happened to Thomas? Her first thought was to go back. But reason kicked in. If those men were still inside, she wouldn't stand a chance. She didn't have time to cry or freeze up. She needed to think fast. She pulled out the pink backpack. It was heavier than it looked. Inside were 2 notebooks, a flashlight, and an old recorder with a label written in pencil. August 11th interview. Agnes stuffed it into her coat and began walking quickly toward the main road. She couldn't take the bus again. It would be too easy to track her. So she walked until she found a cab. "The bus terminal," she told the driver, voice hoarse. Once there, she bought a random ticket, not to go anywhere in particular, but just to sit and think. She slid into a corner seat in the waiting area, pulled the recorder out, and clicked play. The tape hissed, then a small voice came on. "Emily." "My name is Emily," the little voice said. Agnes's eyes widened. "I don't know where we are. They keep moving us. Grace is sick? She cries at night. I try not to cry too, but sometimes I do. The man with the scar told us not to talk." Agnes's hands shook. She rewound the tape and played it again to make sure she hadn't imagined it. It was real. Emily was alive when this was recorded. But how did Thomas get this? Where was it recorded? And who was the man with the scar? She jotted everything down in a small notebook she carried. Emily. Grace, man with scar, moved often. Sick. That's when she noticed the envelope tucked inside the notebook. Inside it were 3 photos, one of a truck with a rusted side panel parked in a dirt lot, one of a building, some kind of warehouse with a green roof, and one of a man, mid-40s, heavy-set, a large scar across his left cheek. There were no names, no locations. But then she flipped the photo of the building and saw scribbled in the corner, Newbridge Storage, Lot 14. Newbridge was a small town 2 hours from where she was. She had no idea how Thomas had found all of this, but she didn't have time to ask questions. She needed to move. She went to the ticket counter and bought a new ticket. By 2:15 p.m., she was on a bus heading to Newbridge. The road stretched on, quiet and endless. Her eyes kept darting to the aisle, half expecting someone in black to come down the bus steps at any moment. But no one did. When she got to Newbridge, the sun was already beginning to set. She asked a few people about Newbridge Storage. A gas station clerk pointed her down the road. "Big green roof," he said. "Can't miss it." She reached the place just before dark. Rows and rows of rusted storage units stretched across the field. It looked abandoned, except for a flickering bulb over the office door. She walked past the gate unnoticed and began counting. Lot 12, Lot 13, then Lot 14. The lock was broken, or maybe it had been left that way. She pushed the door open slowly. The unit was dark, but her flashlight helped. She swept it across the floor. Old furniture, dusty boxes, then a mattress. Small, child-sized, her breath caught. She walked closer. Something crunched under her foot. Candy wrappers. A worn-out teddy bear lay in the corner. She picked it up. Its eyes were missing, but the little heart sewn onto its chest read Emily. She turned and froze. A man stood at the entrance of the unit, holding a crowbar. It was the man from the photo. Scarred face, cold eyes. Agnes backed away slowly. "I don't want trouble." "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice flat. She swallowed hard. "Where are the girls?" He took a step forward. "You got 5 seconds to walk away, Nun. You don't know what you're in the middle of." But Agnes didn't move. "I'm not leaving without answers." He sighed, then suddenly charged forward. Agnes ducked, just as the crowbar smashed against the wall beside her. She scrambled past him, out of the storage unit, her heart thudding like a drum. He followed. She ran down the row of storage units, looking for something, anything. She spotted a long metal pipe lying by the chain-link fence. She grabbed it and turned just as he lunged at her. She swung hard. The pipe cracked against his ribs. He stumbled, gasping. She swung again, catching his arm. He dropped the crowbar and fell to the ground, groaning. "Where are the girls?" she shouted. He coughed, tried to crawl away. Agnes pressed the pipe to his throat. "Tell me." "They moved him weeks ago," he wheezed. "I don't know where. I just watched the place." She looked around and saw a set of keys hanging from his belt. She yanked them off. "What do these open?" she demanded. He didn't answer, so she searched his pockets. A phone, a wallet, and a card with a strange emblem and the name of a trucking company, Blackgate Hauling. She backed away, breathing hard. "If you're lying, I'll be back." He just laughed weakly, holding his side. Agnes didn't wait. She ran through the field, hopped a short fence, and disappeared into the trees. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of town, breathless and shaking. She needed to find out more about Blackgate Hauling. Whatever this was, it was deeper than she ever imagined. Sister Agnes didn't sleep that night. She hid out in an old church on the outskirts of Newbridge. The front doors were locked, but she found a side window cracked open and slipped in. The dusty pews, cold air, and faint scent of wax felt oddly comforting, like the world she used to know. She sat in the last row and pulled out the card she'd taken from the man at the storage unit. Blackgate Hauling. There was a number, but no address. She didn't dare call it. Instead, she flipped open her notebook and began writing everything she knew. Emily and Grace were taken. They had been moved from one place to another. Someone had been keeping them in hidden spots like that storage unit. Blackgate Hauling was involved. The man with the scar worked for them. She opened the wallet she had stolen from him. No driver's license. Just a company badge, Mark Easton Security. The photo looked just like him. Cold stare. Scar on the cheek. She tore it out and kept it. Then she tossed the wallet under one of the pews. The next morning, she left the church as the sun rose. Her legs were sore, and her feet blistered from all the walking, but she didn't slow down. She caught a local bus back toward the city and stopped near the industrial district. Rows of factories, warehouses, and loading docks stretched for miles. It took her 4 hours, but she finally found it. A large metal sign, half rusted, stood at the entrance of a fenced yard. Blackgate Hauling and Transport, no trespassing. She didn't go through the front. Instead, she circled the property and found a narrow path between 2 storage containers. She crouched, careful not to be seen by the 2 men near the loading dock. She watched. Several trucks were lined up, engines rumbling, ready to go. One of them had the same logo as the one in Thomas's photo, rusted side panel, dented rear bumper. She moved closer. A man came out of the office carrying a clipboard and walked toward the trucks. He knocked twice on the back of the first one. A few seconds later, the metal doors opened slightly, and another man stepped out from inside. Agnes' breath caught. Inside the truck, she saw a narrow space with blankets, bottled water, and plastic crates. She wasn't crazy. Someone was hiding people, maybe children, in those trucks. She pulled back before anyone noticed her and quickly jotted down the license plate of the truck. Back at a small library in the city, she convinced the librarian to let her use one of the public computers. She searched for the trucking company, the plate number, anything connected to Blackgate Hauling. Most results led nowhere. It was a ghost company, almost nothing online, no address listed, no owner. But she dug deeper. After an hour, she hit something. A local news article from 2 years ago. Driver from Blackgate Hauling arrested for transporting illegal immigrants in cargo hold. No names mentioned. Charges dropped, no follow-up stories. Agnes leaned back, heart pounding. This was bigger than missing children. There were more victims. This company had been doing this for years, hiding people in trucks, moving them through back roads, and silencing anyone who got in the way. But why? Who was running this? She knew she needed help, but not the police. Not after how quickly they gave up on Emily and Grace. She needed someone who wouldn't turn her away. She found an old friend, Peter Walsh, a former soldier turned private investigator. Years ago, he had helped the orphanage recover stolen funds from a corrupt contractor. He owed Sister Agnes a favor. She called the number from a payphone. "Peter, it's Agnes," he laughed. "Sister Agnes, you still alive? I need your help." "It's serious, about 2 missing girls from St. Mary's." His tone changed instantly. "Where are you?" She gave him an address. They met in a diner 30 minutes later. Peter was tall, broad-shouldered, and looked like someone who didn't lose fights. He listened without interrupting while she laid out everything: the letter, the backpack, the motel, the gunfight, the photos, the trucking company, and the storage unit. When she was done, he leaned forward. "Do you have any proof?" She placed the pink backpack on the table. Peter opened it, the notebooks, the recorder, the photos. He stared at the picture of the man with the scar. "I've seen this guy before. He worked security for a contractor that handled a warehouse near the docks." "Can you help me find the girls?" she asked. "I can do more than that," he said. "I can find whoever's behind this." They made a plan. That night, they returned to the Blackgate lot, this time in Peter's car. He wore a black hoodie and carried a small handgun in his belt. Agnes stayed in the back seat, watching through binoculars. Around midnight, a truck rolled in from a side road and stopped near the loading area. No headlights, no sound. 2 men came out and opened the back. Peter grabbed his camera and took pictures quickly. Agnes whispered, "That's the same truck from the photo." "Got it," Peter replied. "Time to follow." They tailed the truck for nearly an hour, driving with their lights off, staying 2 cars behind. The truck turned off the highway and headed down an unmarked dirt road that led deep into the forest. Finally, it stopped near a small farmhouse with no lights and no mailbox. Peter parked 100 yards back. "We walk from here." Agnes's hands were shaking. "Are you sure this is safe?" "No," Peter said. "But I didn't come all this way to turn back now." They moved through the trees silently. Agnes held her breath with every step. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Then they heard voices, low, muffled, coming from inside the farmhouse. They crept to the window. Inside, a group of men stood around a table, paperwork, bags of cash, radios, and one of them, the man with the scar. Agnes pulled out the recorder and hit record. Peter whispered, "We need to get inside. If there are kids here, we get them out." They circled to the back and found a storm door leading to the basement. Peter picked the lock in seconds. Inside, the air was damp and cold. It smelled like mold and old sweat. Then they heard it, a cough, a small voice, a shuffle. They turned the corner and found them. 5 children huddled together under a dirty blanket. One of them, thinner than the rest, looked up. It was Grace. Her face was pale, eyes sunken, but unmistakably her. Agnes gasped. "Grace," she whispered. "It's me, Sister Agnes." The girl blinked. "You came for us?" "Yes, sweetheart," Agnes said, choking up. "We're getting you out," Peter whispered. "Let's move." Quietly, Agnes helped the children up one by one, keeping them close. But just as they reached the stairs, the basement door creaked open. A man stood there, holding a shotgun. Peter drew his pistol. Agnes shielded the kids. The man didn't speak. Then he raised the gun. And Peter fired first. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The gunshot was deafening in the small basement. The man at the top of the stairs fell backward with a loud thud, his shotgun clattering beside him. Peter didn't wait. He rushed up the steps, kicked the door open fully, and cleared the hallway with quick, practiced movements. Sister Agnes stayed behind, arms wrapped tightly around the children. Grace was clinging to her, shaking like a leaf. The other kids, a mix of boys and girls, all between 5 and 10, were too stunned to cry. Peter called down, "Clear for now. Come on, fast." Agnes guided the kids up the stairs one at a time. The house was dimly lit, cluttered with old furniture and stained rugs. A small TV was still on in the corner of the living room, playing some nature show, the sound turned low. Peter kept his gun raised as he moved from room to room. Sister Agnes stayed low, holding Grace's hand tightly. She whispered to the children, "Just a little longer. We're almost safe." They reached the front door, but just as Peter cracked open, headlights poured in through the windows. A car had pulled up. Peter swore under his breath. "They've got company." He turned to Agnes. "Take the kids to the back. Hide them in the woods. I'll draw them off." Agnes stared at him. "Peter, no. No argument, sister."
Go!
Agnes didn't hesitate. She ushered the kids back through the kitchen and out the rear door. The night was cold, the wind sharp against their skin. She kept them close, guiding them into the trees, telling them to stay low and keep quiet. Behind them, gunfire erupted. One shot, then another, shouting, a scream. The kids whimpered, but Agnes hushed them quickly. "He's buying us time. We have to move." They stumbled through the woods, stepping over fallen logs and ducking under low branches. Agnes didn't know where she was going, only that it had to be away from the farmhouse. After what felt like forever, they reached a gravel road. Agnes saw headlights in the distance and panicked, pulling the children off the road and into the brush. But the car slowed and stopped. The driver got out, holding a flashlight. "Hello?" a deep voice called. "Anyone there?" Agnes recognized him immediately. "Sheriff Carr," she whispered. The man turned and shone the light on her. His eyes went wide. "Sister Agnes? What the hell? Are those kids?" She stepped out, still shielding them. "You need to help us now." Carr waved them over. "Get in the car, hurry." He opened the back door, and the children piled in. Grace held on to Agnes the entire time. The sheriff looked shaken. "I got a call about shots fired." "What happened back there?" Agnes looked him dead in the eye. "You want the short version or the truth?" He looked back at the kids, then back to her. "Truth." She told him everything on the drive back, about Thomas, the photos, Blackgate, the storage unit, and the farmhouse. When they reached the station, Carr ordered his deputies to seal off the area and bring backup. Agnes sat with the kids in the break room while the sheriff called it in. She wrapped Grace in a blanket and gave her a bottle of water. The girl hadn't said a word since they left the woods. Carr came back 20 minutes later. "The house is empty. Whoever was there took off. But we found 2 dead men. One of them matches your description of the man with the scar." "And Peter?" Agnes asked, voice cracking. Carr shook his head slowly. "No sign of him." Agnes felt her chest tighten. She stared at the floor, too numb to speak. They called in child services. Paramedics arrived to check the children. No one questioned Agnes too much, not that night. The sheriff kept things quiet for now. He told the press it was an undercover sting gone right. The kids were safe. That's what mattered. But for Sister Agnes, it wasn't over. The next morning, she returned to the police station with the photo of the truck's license plate and the recorder from the pink backpack. Carr took it seriously now. He set up a small task force. 3 officers, 2 agents from the state. Agnes wasn't supposed to be involved anymore, but no one told her to leave. She spent the next 3 days poring through files, maps, and reports. The man with the scar, Mark Easton, had a record. Assault, illegal transport, threats. He had worked for several companies, all shell companies with ties to one larger name, Winthrop Holdings. They owned warehouses, trucks, even old schools and churches, most of them abandoned. On paper, it looked clean. In reality, it was a front. Agnes circled a property on the map, a large abandoned hospital about an hour north. It was listed under Winthrop. She brought it to Carr. "This is the next place," she told him. He looked at the map, nodded once, then called his team. They went in quietly that night. Carr took a squad of officers. Agnes insisted on going, and despite every protest, he let her come, so long as she stayed in the car. The hospital was a gray, crumbling building surrounded by trees. Vines crawled up its broken walls. Most of the windows were shattered. It looked like a place long forgotten, but someone had been there recently. A small truck was parked out back. The same rusted panel, same faded logo. Carr gave the signal. The team moved in. Agnes sat in the back of the patrol car, gripping the edge of the seat, eyes locked on the building. 5 minutes past 10, then gunshots. Carr's voice crackled through the radio. "We've got movement. 2 suspects down, 1 fleeing through the west side." More shots. Agnes couldn't sit still. She stepped out of the car, heart racing. Then a figure burst from the side of the building, limping, face bloody. It was Peter. He was alive. Agnes ran to him. He dropped to his knees in front of her, coughing hard. They moved the others. Not here. She helped him up. "You're okay. You're safe." Carr came running over. "We've got the place secured. Found more supplies, restraints, old clothes, but no more kids." Peter nodded slowly. "They have another location. This was just a middle point." Agnes looked at him. "Then we keep going." Carr didn't argue. This wasn't a case anymore. It was a mission. They were getting closer. The pieces were finally coming together. But the people behind this, they weren't done yet. Peter spent the night in the hospital under guard. He had bruised ribs, a mild concussion, and 2 fractured fingers. But he was alive and talking. Sister Agnes sat beside him the next morning as he opened a folder he'd kept hidden in a bag beneath his jacket the night before. It was full of names, receipts, truck logs, and locations. Everything he and Thomas had collected over the years. Peter looked her in the eye. Thomas was the one who cracked it. He tracked a pattern in the truck routes. Every 3 weeks, they rotate 2 holding locations, 1 transfer spot, and then a drop point. Agnes leaned in. "And you know where the next drop is?" He nodded. "If they're sticking to the same cycle, it's happening tonight." Peter flipped the page. Old sawmill on Route 47, shut down 10 years ago. Quiet, out of the way, and close to the river. Sheriff Carr joined them later that afternoon. He looked tired but determined. "State troopers are sending backup. We'll be ready." Agnes stood. "I'm coming." Carr didn't argue this time. No one did. By nightfall, 2 unmarked vans, 1 sheriff's car, and a black SUV were parked a mile down the road from the sawmill. They watched through night vision binoculars as 2 trucks pulled up to the building around 9:30 p.m. No headlights, no sound, just quiet, practiced movement. 4 men stepped out, all armed. One unlocked the side door of the sawmill while another climbed into the back of a truck. Peter whispered, "It's happening now. They're moving them." Carr gave the signal. The team fanned out through the trees, rifles ready, radios silent. Agnes stayed behind in the command van, listening to everything through a headset. Peter led the first team around the back. Carr took the left flank. The plan was to hit fast, hit hard, and catch them before they loaded the kids into any vehicles. Agnes listened to every breath. Then go, 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 gunfire exploded in her ears. She gripped the edge of her seat, heart thudding. Peter's voice came through. "Suspect down, back entrance." 2 more inside, more gunfire. Another voice, "We've got 1 truck open, empty." Then something different, screaming, "Child." Agnes pressed the headset tighter to her ear. A second officer's voice, "We found them. In the side office, 3 kids alive." I repeat, alive, tears filled Agnes's eyes. But it wasn't over yet. One of the suspects had slipped away into the woods. The radio buzzed with orders. Teams fanned out, searching every inch. The man was dangerous, armed, and clearly not working alone. Peter followed tracks into the woods, flashlight low. He moved slow, careful, and then a click. He froze. He looked down, tripwire. "Bomb!" he shouted. The device didn't go off, but the warning sent waves through the team. These people were more organized than anyone had thought. This wasn't just a smuggling ring. It was a network. By dawn, they had arrested 4 suspects. 2 were injured in the firefight, 1 dead, and 1, the leader, had vanished into the trees. But the real victory? 6 children rescued. One of them, dirty, hungry, but breathing, was Emily. Agnes couldn't move when she saw her. She just stood there as the girl, frail and pale, looked up slowly. "Sister Agnes," Emily whispered. Agnes ran forward and wrapped her arms around her. "I've got you now. I've got you." Emily broke down sobbing, and Agnes held her tighter than she'd ever held anyone before. They were finally both alive. Later that day, the sheriff sat everyone down in the station conference room. The air was tense. Carr placed a photo on the table, a grainy image taken from one of the suspects' phones. It showed a man in a suit, shaking hands with one of the arrested traffickers. The man was clean-shaven, smiling, well-dressed. "Name's Victor Harlan," Carr said. "Runs a security consulting firm. Rich, powerful, big investor in real estate." Peter narrowed his eyes. "Why would a guy like that be tied to this?" "Because he owns Winthrop Holdings," Carr replied. "The company behind all those fake properties and truck routes." Sister Agnes whispered, "He's the one. The man behind it all." Carr nodded. "We believe so. Problem is, he's never touched anything directly. Always works through someone else." Peter leaned forward. "Then we pull his house apart, piece by piece." Carr agreed. "We'll need warrants, surveillance, pressure." Peter shook his head. "No time, he knows we're closing in. We'll run." That's when Agnes spoke. "Then we make him stay." They looked at her. "I'll lure him out," Carr frowned. "Sister." "No, he knows someone's been asking questions. If I pretend to know more than I do, he'll want to stop me." Peter looked impressed. "It's risky." "I'm old," Agnes said with a shrug. "I can afford risky." That evening, they put the plan into motion. Agnes used a burner phone to call the number on the back of the Blackgate business card. She left a message, simple, clear, and deliberate. "I know what you did. I know about the girls. If you don't want the whole town to know, meet me in person. Midnight. The old church. Come alone." Then they waited. Peter and Carr set up a sting around the church. Plainclothes officers were stationed in nearby buildings. Peter and two others hid in the choir loft. Carr waited by the side entrance with his radio. Midnight silence, then headlights. A black car pulled into the parking lot. The man who stepped out wore a long coat and gloves. Tall, confident, unafraid, Victor Harlan. He walked into the church, hands in his pockets. Agnes sat in the front row, facing the altar. He approached slowly, his voice calm. "You're either very brave or very stupid." She turned. "I've been called both." He smirked. "So what do you think you know?" "I know you've hurt children," she said plainly. "And I know it ends now." Harlan laughed quietly. "You think some washed-up nun and a few cops scare me? I own the people who own this town." From the balcony, Peter's voice rang out. "You don't own us." Harlan turned too late. Officers poured in from every side. He reached into his coat, but Peter fired first, hitting him in the leg. Harlan dropped, groaning, reaching for something. Another officer kicked it away, a small pistol. Carr stepped forward, cuffing him. "Victor Harlan, you're under arrest." Agnes stood slowly. Her hands were shaking, but she kept her back straight. The nightmare was almost over, because as they dragged Harlan out of the church, he turned to Agnes and whispered, "You didn't find all of them." Agnes's blood turned cold. Peter saw her face and stepped forward. "What did he say?" She stared into the darkness. "There's still more out there." The words haunted Sister Agnes for days. "You didn't find all of them." She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emily and Grace, trapped, dirty, scared. And now Harlan's voice rang in her ears, taunting her with a truth she couldn't ignore. There were more children still missing. Victor Harlan had been arrested and was locked up in a high-security facility, but he wasn't talking. His lawyers were stalling. Every request for information, every warrant, every interrogation, blocked or delayed. Peter and Sheriff Carr were doing everything they could, but the leads were running cold. Agnes could feel it. Harlan had buried the trail deep, and he wasn't going to give up the rest of his secrets willingly. So Agnes decided to act again. She returned to the last place she wanted to be, Thomas's motel room. It hadn't been touched since the night of the shootout. The door was sealed with police tape. Carr had offered to send an officer, but Agnes went alone. She needed to see it again for herself. The manager recognized her and let her in. The room still smelled like gunpowder and dust. Bullet holes scarred the walls. The blood had been cleaned, but the memory of that night was still thick in the air. She searched every drawer, every shelf, every inch of the room. Then she found something. Behind the dresser, taped to the back panel, was a folded paper map. Handwritten notes lined the edges, and one location had been circled in red multiple times. Mercy Crossing, Storage Yard 9. Agnes had never heard of the place. She took it to Peter that night. He studied the map. Mercy Crossing's not on any current records. Might be a ghost town. There's an old train depot up north that used to be called that. Agnes leaned forward. Then that's where we go. Peter didn't argue. The next day, they drove 6 hours north, deep into the hills. Mercy Crossing was barely a dot on the map. A few rusted-out homes, a gas station that hadn't pumped fuel in 20 years, and a long-abandoned train depot with a row of storage yards behind it. Agnes and Peter parked far from the road and walked in on foot. The place felt forgotten. Wind pushed broken shutters against cracked windows. Grass grew between the tracks. Crows circled overhead. But Yard 9 was real. They found it behind a crumbling metal fence. The chain was new, recently installed. Peter pulled bolt cutters from his bag and snapped the lock. The yard was quiet. Rows of steel containers stood in the dirt, some stacked 2 or 3 high. Each one was marked with white numbers. Most were rusted shut, but one stood out. Number 9. It was clean. Fresh tire tracks led right up to it. Peter motioned for Agnes to step back. He checked the handle. Locked. Then a sound from inside. A muffled thump. Then again, faint but real. Peter pulled his pistol. Someone's in there. He smashed the lock with a crowbar, yanked the doors open, and froze. Inside were 3 children, eyes wide. Dirty, scared, but alive. Agnes stepped forward, dropping to her knees. "It's okay. You're safe now." One boy burst into tears. The others clung to each other. Peter radioed Carr immediately. "We found more kids. Yard 9, Mercy Crossing. Need medical and transport now." As they waited, Agnes tried to comfort the children. One of them, a small girl no more than 6, kept looking behind her nervously. Agnes followed her gaze and saw a locked crate in the corner. She stood and walked over. "Is someone else in there?" she asked gently. The girl nodded. Peter pried it open. Inside was a boy, unconscious, breathing shallowly. They pulled him out and laid him on the ground. Minutes later, Carr and 2 cruisers arrived, along with an ambulance. Paramedics took over. The kids were loaded up gently, given water and blankets. The boy in the crate had a weak pulse, but he was alive. Peter looked at Carr. They were stashing them. Like cargo, Carr nodded grimly. And they were planning another move. Peter turned to Agnes. "How the hell did Thomas know this?" Agnes shook her head. "He knew more than he ever told us. He left clues everywhere. It's like he planned for someone to pick up where he left off." Back at the station, the children were identified. All of them had been listed in missing person reports from different towns, some for years. They were from broken homes, foster care, group shelters, forgotten by nearly everyone, but not by Sister Agnes. She stayed by their side, holding their hands, telling them they weren't alone anymore. But something else still gnawed at her. Back in the motel room, she had also found a name scribbled at the bottom of the map, Calden Roy. She brought it to Peter. He raised his eyebrows. "Calden Roy? That's the former head of juvenile welfare? Retired 2 years ago." Agnes's voice went cold. "Then why is his name on a smuggling map?" Peter made a few calls. No one had heard from Roy in over a year. He disappeared after retirement, citing family health reasons, and moving to a cabin upstate. Agnes and Peter hit the road again. Roy's cabin was buried deep in the woods, 30 miles from the nearest gas station. When they arrived, the place looked quiet, but something felt off. A generator hummed faintly. The front door was closed, blinds pulled tight. Peter knocked. No answer. He walked around the back. Then movement. A gunshot rang out, splintering wood near Peter's head. "Gun!" he shouted, diving for cover. Agnes ducked behind the car. Another shot blasted through the trees. Peter fired back, forcing the shooter into hiding. Then Carr's voice buzzed through the radio. "Reinforcements 2 minutes out. Hold position." Peter flanked the cabin, moving low and fast. A final shot rang out, then silence. Peter entered the cabin carefully. Inside he found Roy, a single gunshot wound to the chest. Rifle still in his lap. Carr arrived moments later. "Looks like suicide." Peter shook his head. Or someone made it look that way. The place was filled with paperwork, maps, burner phones, ledgers. A web of connections. Agnes found a safe under the floorboards. Inside was a flash drive. They plugged it into Peter's laptop back at the car. It held videos, dozens of them. Interviews, tracking logs, names, base locations, evidence. Enough to bring down an entire network. Agnes stared at the screen, heart pounding. "This is it," Peter said, "the whole operation." But it wasn't over yet, because one last file caught her attention. It was labeled Project St. Mary's. Agnes felt the blood drain from her face. That was the name of her orphanage. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Sister Agnes stared at the flash drive screen, unable to move. Project St. Mary's, her orphanage. The same place she had devoted nearly her whole life to. Her home. Peter sat beside her, clicking into the file. It opened slowly, revealing a series of scanned documents, videos, and internal memos. All of it tied to a project that had started over 8 years ago. A memo read, Target Facility, St. Mary's Orphanage, rural low oversight, minimal state funding. Viable for recruitment and transition trials. Peter turned to Agnes. This wasn't random. They chose St. Mary's on purpose. Agnes's hands trembled. She scrolled through page after page, a plan that had been in motion long before Emily and Grace had ever arrived. The documents listed names, children who had vanished, who had been relocated without raising suspicion. Most were said to have been adopted. Some were labeled transferred, but they never made it to any homes. They'd been taken, moved through the system like packages, and someone on the inside had helped them. Peter narrowed his eyes at one name at the bottom of the file, confirmed access Sister Ruth. Agnes recoiled. No, that can't be. Sister Ruth had worked at St. Mary's for 35 years. She was strict but loyal, always the first to rise and the last to rest. Peter read another document aloud, operative placed in house staff. Oversight and coordination of outgoing transitions to be handled with care. Maintain minimal suspicion. Agnes sat back in her seat, stunned. I lived with her. I prayed with her. I trusted her. She was moving the kids, Peter said, handing them off, making it look normal. Agnes clenched her fists. That's why she called roll that morning and didn't panic when they were gone. Peter stood up. We need to go to her now. Car arranged back up. They drove through the night back to St. Mary's. By morning, a cold mist hung over the fields behind the orphanage. The sun struggled to break through. Sister Ruth was in the chapel, dusting the altar as if nothing had happened. When Agnes entered, the older nun turned with a calm smile. Sister Agnes, you're up early. Agnes didn't respond. She stepped forward, the pain in her heart heavy. Peter stayed by the door, hand near his sidearm. Agnes held out the flash drive. Why, Ruth? Why would you do this? Sister Ruth's smile faded. She stared at the drive, then at Peter, and finally back at Agnes. She sighed. It was supposed to help them. Agnes blinked. What? They told me these children would be placed in better homes, out of poverty, away from the streets. Safe. Cared for. She wiped her hands on her habit. I believed them. You handed children over to traffickers, Peter snapped. Ruth shook her head. I didn't know it was like that, not at first. By the time I realized what it was, they said if I stopped, they'd shut down the orphanage. Or worse, Agnes's voice trembled. And when Emily and Grace vanished, Ruth looked away. I didn't know what they were doing with them. Only that once they were picked up, they never came back. Peter stepped forward. You're under arrest. Ruth didn't fight, she didn't cry. She just folded her hands and nodded. I deserve it. As Carr's deputies escorted her away, Agnes sat alone in the chapel. The silence felt heavy, but also cleansing. For the first time, the lies were gone. The truth was finally in the light. 1 month later, the investigation made national news. Dozens of arrests followed. Hidden facilities were raided in 6 states. Children were rescued. Networks destroyed. The recordings, documents, and witness testimonies from the flash drive were more than enough to bring the operation to the ground. And Victor Harlan, he tried to take his own life in custody, failed. He was now on trial, facing charges that would keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. The court named Sister Agnes a key whistleblower, but she didn't care for attention. She didn't want the praise. She only wanted one thing: to rebuild. The state offered support. Donations poured in from people all over the country who had heard her story. Survivors wrote to her, parents, volunteers, and most importantly, the children came back. Grace returned to live at St. Mary's. Emily, too, alongside other rescued kids who had no one left. Agnes reopened the orphanage, this time with a small staff of trusted faces, some from local churches, others from former foster families. Peter visited often. He no longer carried a weapon, just books and toys. One afternoon, Emily came to Sister Agnes with her backpack, the same pink one, now patched and clean. She reached inside and handed Agnes the recorder. "I want you to keep it," she said. Agnes smiled gently. "Are you sure?" Emily nodded. "That's how you found me." Agnes held it close. Outside, children's laughter echoed in the yard as they ran and played. Grace chased 2 boys with a plastic water gun. Peter helped paint a new swing set. Agnes sat on the porch, the sun warm on her face. The past had taken so much, but she had taken something back. The girls who vanished were no longer lost. They were home, and no one would ever take them again. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also in Other to strengthen our community. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.